Okay, it's 1:31. And I would like to say good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. Welcome to the Town of Highland Beach Town Commission regular meeting, Tuesday, December 3rd, 2019, at 1:30 p.m. in the Commission chambers. Kindly silence all your cell phones. We appreciate that. Town Clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner David.
Present.
Commissioner Donaldson.
Here.
Commissioner Gossick-Seidman.
Here.
Vice Mayor Bobby.
Present.
Mayor Zellniker.
Here.
Town Attorney Tercivia.
Here.
Town Manager Labadie.
Present.
Thank you.
And now we're going to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence for our troops who are away from home. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Are there any additions or deletions to our agenda this afternoon?
Yes, I have one.
What would you like to add?
To add the low-hanging wire that needed repair over Thanksgiving weekend and a general discussion, please.
And where would you like that placed? Under new business?
Wherever you see fit, new business is fine. Would that be
So
item
it would be
correct?
the first new business?
Would you want it item 12B?
Yes, ma'am, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hanging wires? Okay, anyone
Madam
else
Mayor?
have new business?
It's not exactly new business. I'm wondering why we are discussing hanging wires, since this is a policy-making body and not a housekeeping or maintenance body. So I'm not sure that this is something that really falls within our purview. I'm not even sure it falls within the town manager's purview, as opposed to FPL or Comcast or AT&T, whoever's wire it was that was hanging, that, as I understand it, has now been repaired. So it seems kind of a moot point to me.
No, ma'am, this would require making a possible decision and setting, and including looking at our policies about this. This is a repeat situation, so we need to have a discussion, since it's fresh and new. Thank you.
Well, it's up to the commissioners as to whether or not to add it. So, Mr. Attorney, should we vote on whether to add this at this time, or?
You can do that. Have a
We
motion
can
to
do
add
that. So in other words, Commissioner Gossett-Seidman would like to make a policy. And in order to make a policy, we have to discuss and vote on it. Is
Yes,
that-
ma'am.
She's asking for an agenda item to be added to discuss a possible policy.
Right.
That's correct.
Correct.
This is a fifth time this happened, so I think at this point we need to have a discussion.
All right, that's up to the commissioners. Linnell, do you want to take a roll call on that?
There's not a motion on the floor. Is
Which-
there a motion?
Make a motion. Peggy, make a motion.
It's my understanding a commissioner may include something on the agenda at any time without a vote of putting it on the agenda. I mean, I could have come in last week and had this filed. I don't know what the problem is.
Okay, well then, how do you want to do it? Usually we
we
do
can-
I, to change the
Right, in
agenda.
general, you want to add something to the agenda, can be added or deleted by the commission. Now, usually you've allowed each other to simply add items, but any commissioner could always challenge that and say, I want a motion to add it or not add it. So that's apparently what's occurred, so you'd have to have it to the agenda.
Okay. Well, I make the motion to add this to the agenda, please. It's a safety issue concerning the town.
Is there a second on that? Being no second on that,
The motion failed for lack of a second.
Okay, well, that's very weird, so I'll put this on the agenda for January. Thank
you
you.
can also discuss it in your comments.
Sure, I'll do that, and I'll
Please.
put it on the agenda for January. Thanks so much.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Okay, are there any other additions or deletions? on the agenda? No? Commissioner David, do you have any additions? No? Donaldson? Yeah, okay. Vice Mayor?
Nope, good to go.
Good to go. Okay, well, those in favor, just say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Civility pledge, Town Clerk, please read the civility pledge.
We will be respectful of one another even when we disagree. We will direct all comments to the issue. We will avoid personal attacks. Politeness costs so little, by Abraham Lincoln.
Okay. Item number 6, we have presentations and proclamations that will have to do about our 70th anniversary. And Bob Weinroth, our county commissioner, is coming, and he is slightly delayed. So I will put this off until he comes. When he comes, we will add him right on. Okay? So we'll go to number 7. Number 7 is public comments and requests on non-agenda items only. Public comments are now open. Each speaker will be allowed 5 minutes to speak on non-agenda items only. Non-agenda items are items that are not on the agenda today. All comments will be directed to the commission as a body through the presiding officer. Please raise your hand and wait to be recognized. When you come to the podium, clearly speak into the microphone. State your first and last name and address for the record. There are people that will be watching this meeting online. Thank you. Tim?
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Burnich, and I live at 4505 South Ocean Boulevard. As you may notice, I'm not always able to stay for the whole meeting, but when I get home, I tend to watch it the next day on video. The last meeting, there was a problem recording speakers at this podium, and I hope that's been corrected because I couldn't hear I could see them, but I couldn't hear what they were saying. At the last meeting, the commission had a discussion about Code Enforcement Board, about whether or not to keep it, the problem with getting people to serve on it. One of the problems with getting people to serve on it, in my opinion, is that every once in a while this comes up whether or not we're going to have a Code Enforcement Board. And so who wants to be on a board that may or may not exist? And I think the commission has some culpability in why we don't have individuals applying for this board. We had one gentleman, and he went to, in fact, I had vetted him, and he went to another board. Now, we have 3 vacancies, and there's a reason why we have 3 vacancies. First of all, one of the members, Mr. Karabek, died. The next gentleman, Carl Gaiman, he moved to Flagler Beach. And the third one, Jack Halprin, he was serving on 2 boards, not quasi-judicial boards, and he was only allowed to serve on 1. So that's why we have 3 vacancies right now. The other thing is not everybody that gets appointed now gets a full 3-year term. If you'll notice, some of the terms are short, and I think that has a problem getting people to serve. They want to serve 3 years if they're going to serve at all. And those are my comments about code enforcement. I appreciate it that you would keep the Code Enforcement Board active. We've had 3 cases in the last year and a half. One, a gentleman was performing work in his townhouse condo without permits. When he was issued a stop order, he tore them up and did that twice. Finally, we got him before the Code Enforcement Board, and I think it cost him in fines and penalties and finally getting his permits about $7,000. He learned a tough lesson. We had another case where an individual had a boat at their dock, but it wasn't theirs. It was a friend's, or maybe they were leasing the space, which is against town code. We gave this individual 90 days to correct the problem before there would be a fine. They did correct the problem, but then they took it to court, and they lost. The district court up in West Palm Beach sided with the Code Enforcement Board. And the third one was with a problem just south of Toscana, and I think that's been resolved. I haven't heard if there's any fines been collected or anything like that. So I think the Code Enforcement Board does its job. I know there was some concern about us getting sued. Well, people can take us to court over anything. So I don't think putting a magistrate in there would make a difference. They can be taken to court too. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. Okay. Anyone else have any comments? John?
John Bowden, 3407 South Ocean Boulevard. Crosswalks. I've experienced 2 incidences in crosswalks at the newly installed in Spanish River Boulevard. I was westbound in the second car, behind the car, stopped at the light in the right-hand lane for a pedestrian pushing a bicycle, when a car in the left-hand lane passed us and went right through the crosswalk. Why? Because they could not see a crosswalk light or even a crosswalk sign because they were mounted so low. Second, today, I was eastbound on the right-hand lane alongside a car in the left-hand lane that began to slow. I then realized I was blowing right through a blinking pedestrian crosswalk sign with 2 pedestrians standing on the sidewalk. You gotta be kidding me, I'm the crosswalk guy, and I didn't see the lights. How many others won't see them? Please do all in your power to see that the lights and signage used in Highland Beach is the most effective in brightness, placement, and overall visibility to help avoid incidences like I just described. I hope we have our crosswalk signs to be as forceful as possible in making drivers aware that there is a pedestrian wanting to or actually crossing the crosswalk. To this end, and with the 2 incidences I described, I hope we could have multiple flashing lights that are the brightest available and that are located high enough to be seen by drivers in the following vehicles. The lights being used on Spanish River Boulevard are not effective, and we need a much better and more effective system in Highland Beach. Wish list. Light boxes at both the top and the bottom of the sign, and also blinking lights, 8 of them around the edges of the perimeter of the sign itself. All lights to be the brightest available to be installed. The extra expense is not that great to assure that drivers' awareness is maximized for both day and night. Please do not confuse the quality, brightness, or number of lights on the signs that are used on the southernmost crosswalks as a standard. They are significantly higher systems available. Thank you.
We thank you, as always, for your input. That's all right. Why don't you hand them to me and I'll pass them down? Okay. Would anyone else like to make any comment whatsoever on a non-agenda item? Okay. Yes, please. Please introduce yourself. This is Mr. Shoemaker. Welcome.
Yes, name is John Shoemaker, and 3594 South Ocean at Highland Beach Club. I'm just going to make a suggestion, and I know you all have been working pretty hard on this whole issue of water, and what we've done with, delivery of water, piping of water, how we manage water. The suggestion is I've gone through this, and I've talked to a lot of people, especially my wife. For years, I'll have to admit, I am one of the people who goes to any number of stores and buys bottled water, brings it home because we use that for drinking. The water still, at least for Highland Beach Club and at least 2 others, the taste is not there. That's all I'm trying to say is the taste of the water doesn't make you feel comfortable. Now, I thought, okay, it's just us, we're being picky and whatnot. From Boston, clearly the water up there is really amazing, really good. I've lived in Texas, Colorado, Maryland, Florida, elsewhere, and in New England. The water here just seems to be the most difficult although I'll admit Plano, Texas is the worst. So I would suggest, honestly, there's got to be a way besides managing the data that speaks to contaminants and all the minerals and the ingredients of the water, that somehow there should be a taste testing going on, even though there is one reference to taste in this report. Because in the end, the people will decide on the water by how clear it is and how it tastes and how it smells. Right now, I don't think we get a passing grade, and I know that there's a lot of work has been done, so I just pass that on to you as feedback that's more work I think needs to be given to at least this area of taste, possibly smell. And it may be because of the condominiums having problems, not necessarily the town, that you deliver the water from the town pipes to inside the condominium to their pipes, and I've gone through those conversations, and there's a lot of disagreement about that as well. Anyways, not to bend your ear, I just thought I would pass that along. Thanks very much.
All right, thank you for your comments. Okay, anyone else have any comments for our meeting today? No? Being no further comments, we'll move on. We're going on to boards and committees and announcements. We have board vacancies. Board of Adjustment and Appeals Board, 3 vacancies for a 3-year term. Code Enforcement Board, 3 vacancies. 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending July 1, 2021, 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending August 1st, 2021, and 1 vacancy for an unexpired term ending May 28th, 2022. Financial Advisory Board, 1 upcoming vacancy for an unexpired term ending April 30th, 2021. Planning Board, 1 upcoming vacancy for an unexpired term ending September 1st, 2022. We have upcoming meetings and events, of course, our Light Up the Holidays and 70th anniversary events, December 5th, 6:30 in the evening. We hope to see many, many people. We have our Natural Resources Preservation Board meeting, December 9th, 9:30 a.m. Planning Board meeting, December 12th, 2019, 9:30 a.m. We have a Town Commission regular meeting, December 17th, 1:30 p.m. Town Hall will be closed for Christmas Eve, December 24th, and Christmas Day, December 25th, 2019. Board action report, none.
Mayor?
Yes?
I got some email from David Stern, Chair of the FAB, who wished to supplement Doug Hillman's action report from our last meeting regarding
Okay.
the FAB. Is it all right if I read it
Certainly.
on his behalf, and then I will give it
We'd
to
love to
Anelda?
have it.
Okay, it says to Highland Beach Commission, the Financial Advisory Board has been tasked by the commission to explore options of the fire department as it relates to service costs of our contract for the future. We are looking forward to Fire Chief DeJesus addressing the advisory board at our next meeting. Vice Chair Hillman gave an excellent update to the commission at its last meeting. There are a few initial questions that our board would like answers to help us in our initial evaluations. These are the questions. Is there a 5-year yearly increase planned in personnel costs and benefits? Is there a 5-year yearly operating expense projection? Are there other planned expenditures or efficiencies that would affect Highland Beach budget over the next 5 years? Then he goes into ambulance service. What is the cost per transport from Highland Beach to hospitals? Is there a different cost depending on transport destination? How do reimbursements work to Highland Beach? There seems to be a high net cost to Highland Beach. From the Delray report, there are $155,000 billed for transports to Highland Beach and $88,000 collected, a net of 66, a net cost of $66,843. If insurance, medical care, et cetera, Medicare, et cetera, does not cover the cost, is secondary billed, and is the resident billed for the difference? Who is responsible for the follow-up? Are the residents and guests of residents treated the same way economically? Those are his comments.
Very good. Thank you. I'm glad to see they're doing their job. Good. Thank you very much. If there's no further comments on that, commissioners? No? Okay. Greg? No? Okay. Then we go to number 9, ordinances and resolutions. The title of our first one is Ordinance Number 19-0100, Code Citation Process, and I refer this item to the town manager.
Thank you, Mayor. As you recall from our last meeting, on actually November 5th meeting where we had our first reading, we had a pretty good discussion on the remaining elements to the code citation ordinance that we wanted modified. Teresa did forward along a marked up red line version via email just so you could see those last bit of changes, and that really related to the Vice Mayor's concerns over Class 1 infractions and Class 2 infractions, and then for first offense and repeat offense violations. And you see those changes on page 3 of the ordinance. Also in the fee schedule, the finalized fee schedule, you'll see the same marked in that version, which has been adopted, but it also shows how we would collect administrative charges and giving some parameters to the Code Enforcement Board to collect those administrative charges. So those ordinances are in place. I did receive some questions on how many code violations or complaints we've had in the last year. We've issued 82 code violations in the last 12 months and 74 warnings. So I was a little bit surprised by the volume, but Mr. Manco, our code enforcement officer, or compliance officer, excuse me, gave me a list along with the chief of police, Chief Hartman, gave me their information on the various types of, violations that we've had here in town. So that's a little bit of a background information. The codes, the various violations, you name it through the code book of ordinances, generally focused on parking and construction. That's generally where you see a majority of your violations in town. So you have the revised version. This is the second reading, which would make it go into effect immediately. We did have a good discussion on 7 other occasions, so I think we're pretty good with hopefully the content that you want to discuss, and hopefully this reflects the last bit of changes desired by the commission and commented on by the residents. I can answer any questions.
Well, thank you very much. We'll start with commission comments. Vice Mayor Bobby, I know you've had a lot to say on this issue.
Yeah, I don't have much really to say on this one at all. I'm happy with the changes. I think it's a nice balance between not overly taxing the residents and having something that has some teeth.
Thank you. Commissioner David?
I agree with Vice Mayor Bobby.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
I agree with the Vice Mayor and Commissioner David, and I wonder if Mr. Labadie could provide just a list of those violations so we can see
Sure.
to the commission. And it might be nice to get a monthly or a quarterly report on that, just to keep us informed.
With your request, I was pleased that the stuff that's Jason's doing, he can easily render a report for compliance assignments out of our SmartGov, and it does a pretty good job capturing probably 90%. Again, those numbers don't address points of contact where Jason will be, hey, you got to do this, and the resident or the contractor say, sure, we'll do that, not a problem, and they take care of it based on an agreement or understanding. These were things that elevated to a point where a letter and some additional action were necessary. So, yeah, I can get that report over to you from him this afternoon. Yeah.
That'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Commissioner Donaldson?
No comments. It looks like it's in good shape to me.
Yep, I think we finally did it. So I think, all right, at this time, public comments are now open. Yes, Mr. Ross? Three minutes. Okay.
John Ross.
For 3 minutes.
Casarina. Sorry, there are some holes. The first being the fact that none of this ordinance tells people who will be hearing their case. A magistrate or the Code Enforcement Board, you got to fix that. You got to come to a decision, guys, and put that in the rules. Secondly, warnings are considered as part of the process. In so doing, you've given the officer administering them the discretion of giving a warning or giving a citation. Well, I would, in all circumstances, if I were cited, go to the magistrate or code enforcement board and say, absolutely, I hung those shingles wrong now that I've been notified. And you're going to make me pay a fine. But these 89 people who had violations previously got warnings before and had no financial liability. Therefore, you've got to clarify the nature of the warning so that it isn't a process and doesn't affect the fines. Okay? People are going to get, if it's your policy that people should have a warning before a citation is issued, say people will be issued a warning before a citation is done. Make sure the warnings have a time limit on them. Say you will address this violation by such and such a time, or you will be issued a violation. Right? That solves your problem and makes it equal. If it is discretionary, who pays and who doesn't pay, and that discretion is being enforced by a non-judicial person, then you got a problem, and you're going to lose all of those cases. Third, there are contradictions in Section 2, 170, subsection D. I can't go into them because I've only got 34 left. Who brings the hearing? In parts of this ordinance, it says the town will bring the hearing. In other parts, it says the respondent will be a hearing. SOP on this is that only respondents can ask for a hearing. Respondents have, well, I got 7 seconds. I'm not going to fit it in. Sorry.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Anybody else have any comments? Okay. There being no further comments, the public comments are now closed. And now we have a commission discussion again. Commissioner David?
I don't think that there's really a lot of discrepancies in here. I think as of right this minute, it's the hearing board, the code enforcement board that does the hearing. We haven't set it up for a magistrate. I know our statute says that it can be, but up to this point right now, we haven't been using that. So I don't think that that's inconsistent. It just gives us an ability in the future if we choose to go to a magistrate system, which I don't think at this point that we're inclined to do. So I have no issue with that. I think that generally in this town, a warning is given before. I don't know that it necessarily has to be codified as such. That's just the way that this town tends to operate, is that it's a small town. We tend to do things less rigorously, perhaps, than if we were a larger town, which works for us because it is a small town. It is a community. So I think that we should pass this bill as it is. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Bobby?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with Commissioner David on the magistrate versus code board. I don't think you really want that said in there. You want to have the flexibility to do that going forward. Warning versus citation, we have this other document that has a nice little layout on it. I know that's not in the ordinance, correct? But is that published anywhere else? It basically says section 2-172.
There's an accompanying section. Again, we're amending or adding these parts to the end of Division 2. At the beginning of it has all the other code enforcement elements or code compliance elements and process that are by ordinance or in the earlier sections and in that division. which does allow the code compliance officer to bring the case forward. So there's other sections. This isn't the only means of code enforcement. This is just clarifying a few sections. There's also the front end that goes out and it kind of lays out how we go about our process. And this is generally how we do it. Now, is there some flexibility? Yes, there's going to be a time, probably more so granted that discretion is granted to our officers. You just don't know what you're going to come into and find, and from time to time, it may be immediately to a ticket. That's for the officers to make that call, because they're going to be in some different situations. Jason, per se, as our code compliance officer, mostly working with construction and daytime activities, does allow for that due process to occur. There's a warning, make that correction. If you don't, then we'll take it to the code board, and then we go through this process. So, but what we find is our compliance rate, if we've had 82 violations and only 3 have gone to the code enforcement board, our compliance rate is quite high. So that's what we want to do. If we want to change the model to pure enforcement, then we would probably tighten these down a bit, but we've kind of wanted to stay in that compliance model. Let's get our residents and contractors to obey our laws versus, really hit them hard and go from that regulatory framework. And again, going to what Commissioner Davis was saying, as a smaller town, we tend to want to be more neighborly in our process, and that's the process we deploy today, and it is in some ways framed in the earlier sections of this division of the Chapter 2.
Got it. And these 7 bullet points, are they listed in the overall ordinance, the large ordinance?
I couldn't tell you. I don't have it in front of me right here as we discuss it, I can bring it up.
Yeah, my only suggestion is maybe have those somewhere formally, because I mean, it's very clear the way it's laid out from beginning to end.
They're either laid out in the ordinance or in the general state law. I think it's Chapter 162, dealing with code enforcement. So that process is pretty well laid out. We can double check and make sure, compare this checklist to that process, make sure it's covered in either the ordinance or the statute.
Got it. In terms of who brings the hearing, if there is an error about the town bringing the hearing, we probably should.
No, we bring them. Code compliance, if there's no compliance and they're resisting to come into compliance, Jason frames it up, sends it over to the code enforcement board. The chair of the code enforcement board, who's here today, then takes the case and presents it to the overall board with Mr. Rubin as counsel, helping them move through that.
And I'll piggyback on what Marshall said. That's your traditional code enforcement process. This civil citation process is a little different. It's more like getting a parking ticket. So when you get to that point, you get the ticket, and then you appeal to the code board if you don't want to pay your ticket. So you're really giving yourself an alternative to that code process, to a citation/ticket process.
Translation, we have it written right, is what you're saying.
Okay.
Yes. Great. And then the last comment I have is we didn't get a chance to hear Mr. Ross's contradictions in Section 172D, but if he wouldn't mind sending them along or giving them 30 seconds to tell us what the contradictions are. I didn't see any contradictions, but love to hear them. That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Donaldson, any comments?
Well, to some of the points raised, I really don't have a problem keeping the option with the magistrate or the code enforcement board. It's just simply kind of a policy thing if the commission ever changes the direction that it wants to go in. It was very clear when we started this, and Chief Hartman, if I'll go back to the origins of some of this, was very clear that what he's seeking is compliance. We're not looking for a strict enforcement. We are looking for that degree of discretion that allows us to seek and obtain that compliance without having to butt heads with all of our residents and immediately put them under a fine. So I'm okay with keeping that, and I don't really see any other issues with this. I'm good with the process and the way the language is. Thank you.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes, thank you. I agree with Commissioner David. This is a small town. We encourage people to sort things out before we slap them with a fine. So that direction of that is in good shape. I wondered if maybe Town Manager Labadie, not to add to his to-do list, but if we could lay out the process in terms of a flow chart so that it would be understandable to residents, builders, anyone else, just to have it on a piece of paper, here you go, so that it's clear to everyone, since we're moving forward to fixing up our codes, our town, that would be something we could hand out when someone had a question without taking a 5-minute answer. Thank you.
Right. Okay, my comment is, I understand there were 82 people that were in code violation, Marshall? You said 82?
Yeah, that's what
All
we
right,
have.
82. Out of the 82, I'm assuming 82 people got warnings.
No, 74 warnings. It could be some of those did get some type of either verbal or written warnings. Luckily, we're going into an IT RFP, kind of plugging a future project we have. We need a more robust data management system. So I can give you more detailed reporting when what was put in, what date,
Well,
what it is.
yeah.
And give you a more
No,
exacting
I'm not looking
report.
for specifics. I'm saying there's 82 people, 82 residents that were notified that they weren't in the code or whatever. And how many of those people were fined? That's what I want to know. And I would like to know how many people complained about their fine.
Well, I would reflect back to the budget, and maybe in total we had like $1,000 worth of fines, and a majority of those are probably A1A parking fines that went out to contractors.
All right, so they paid them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Wait, 494 I thought was in the last year we closed out as fines.
Right,
in
right.
the police department budget, if I recall.
Well,
Shooting
it's-
from the hip a little bit, but I remember that
Right.
number's jumping off.
just so that some people sitting here don't know the history, and the history is we really haven't upgraded any of our fines in many, many, many years. So it was time to upgrade this ordinance, and that's what it was. I just wanted people to understand. So out of all of those, most of them were contractors, and they paid the fine because they knew they did something wrong. So if we know we're doing something wrong, you pay the fine. So I would go along with what we have. As things develop, as if there is an issue with residents or whatever, we have open meetings twice a month. People can come in and they can discuss it and we can change it in the future. And we can modify as we go along. But being we didn't have anything, it's been, how many meetings? 7 meetings we've been discussing this. I think it's very important to get something on the books. That's all. Okay, and is there a motion to adopt ordinance number 19-0100 on second and final reading?
I make the motion to adopt this ordinance.
Is there a
Second.
second? Yes, there's a second. Town clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman,
Yes.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby,
Yes.
Mayor Zellniker.
Yes.
Thank you.
And I
Motion
thank you.
carries. Madam Mayor,
Yes.
Alexandra Ayala from Vice Mayor Weinroth office is here to, County Commissioner is here to present the proclamation.
Very good. I guess Mr. Weinworth couldn't attend?
Yes, good afternoon. He's
Thank you.
unfortunately stuck at his BCC meeting himself. They're having a board meeting right now, and it went long. So
That's okay.
I was able to come and make it to present the proclamation celebrating the anniversary of the town. So
We appreciate you being here.
thank
We
you
want
for
to
letting
thank
me
you.
sub in.
Absolutely. I just wanted to clarify what happened there. Okay,
Yes.
it's all good. Okay, so at this moment, we will have you can present the town of Highland Beach with their proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and he does send his regrets. A proclamation of the Board of County Commissioners of Palm Beach County recognizing the 70th anniversary of the town of Highland Beach. Whereas in 1949, the owners within Highland Beach decided to incorporate their collective lands into a state chartered town and named it Highland Beach, reflecting the very high dunes. And whereas the town of Highland Beach was created and established by charter in 1949, and whereas in November of 1949, the first town council approved its first water plant bonds and began the construction of a water plant, and whereas in the 1950s, post-World War II, Highland Beach was also known as Yamato Rocks, and whereas in the 1960s, the population of Highland Beach skyrocketed by an unbelievable 1,000%. And whereas, throughout its long and rich history, the town of Highland Beach has evolved into a beautiful residential beach community. Now therefore, be it proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Palm Beach County, Florida, assembled in regular session this third day of December 2019, that December 5th, 2019 in Palm Beach County is hereby recognized as the 70th anniversary of the town of Highland Beach. Be it further proclaimed by the Board of County Commissioners of Palm Beach County, Florida, that this proclamation is duly sealed, ribboned, and executed by the members of this board. The foregoing proclamation was sponsored by Commissioner Robert Weinroth, and upon unanimous consent of the board, the mayor declared the proclamation duly enacted. Thank you.
We thank you very much. We're very proud of our town. Thank you. Sure. We'll pass it down to the town manager. Sure. All right, everybody else. Come on, commissioners, we all have to come. We're all commissioners.
Why don't you go up there with them?
Yes, please, please.
Mayor, you're in the middle, you hold up.
Doesn't matter.
Thank you so much. Where should I stand?
You should cut it next to yes,
Okay.
like you're handing it.
Yeah.
There you go. Look at that.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It's hard to believe, it truly is. Many of us sitting here, some of us, quite a number of us, were the baby boomers from 1946, and I know there's quite a number sitting here today around there. So we were 3 years old and the town was incorporated. So it was our fathers who came home from World War II, and they put the town together. Right? Well, some people, yeah, we have commissioners up here, they weren't even born. So. And then we have some commissioners who were in World War II or the Vietnam War. So it's 70 years old. Okay. Now we're going to continue to item number B, resolution number 19-033R, water infrastructure funding needs. A resolution of the Town Commission of the Town of Highland Beach, Florida, supporting passage of legislation to determine the state of Florida water infrastructure funding needed and needs and potential sources of revenue to address the same and providing an effective date. I refer this item to Commissioner Donaldson.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. This particular resolution follows in the footsteps of the items that were adopted by the Florida League of Cities. This one focuses specifically on the item and the committee that I worked on for natural resources, utilities, and infrastructure. And it, again, mimics the three primary focuses of that recommendation to the legislature. The purpose of this resolution is to show support for the funding and the direction that has already been suggested and proposed by the governor. I am asking your consideration that the town of Highland Beach adopt this resolution. It has been recommended that by the Florida League of Cities that various municipalities may want to consider doing this to help lend their support to the effort and to do all we can to help protect our natural resources, particularly our water supply. So it's offered in that spirit. The three primary considerations are number one, an assessment of and reports on the state of Florida water resources infrastructure. Secondly, the identification of funds necessary to protect and enhance Florida's water resources, address water resource and water supply development, provide adequate flood protection, address wastewater management, and provide water quality protection and development, including the treatment of impaired waters and the restoration of natural water bodies. And third, the identification and evaluation of funding alternatives currently available to the state, as well as other financing mechanisms or models being used by other states and foreign governments to address short and long-term water infrastructure needs. And with that, I would like to offer the motion to adopt the resolution.
Okay, is there a second on that so we can have a discussion on the motion?
Sure, I'll second that.
Thank you. Now we'll have a discussion on the motion. Commissioner David, any comments?
Yes, this just seems to be giving our support to the state for something that is definitely needed. We need to make sure that we have palatable water. Think that this is a good thing to do. We need to show support for this type of measure.
Commissioner Gossett-Seidman?
Yes, thank you. I wondered if this is in any financial burden to us, A, and B, what other towns might be, municipalities might be already having approved this.
Yes, this is a model resolution that was distributed. I believe this originated with Broward County. They were the first to do it. I have to say, I'm not sure how many have adopted it. So that part I don't know. To the degree it's a burden, it is a necessary burden. It's one that we all share as taxpayers, and something that helps us understand and start to evaluate what we need to do. The amount of money that is necessary to fully address the issue of water, and by that I mean that very universally. This is for agriculture, industry, business, personal consumption, and recreation. Recreation alone is like a $31 billion business in the state of Florida. The quality of that water is very important just for that business alone. But the amount of funding that has been projected, I have to say, is pretty staggering. Rather than throw wild numbers out there and focus on that, the Florida League of Cities decided to focus more on encouragement, encourage the state to come up with decent funding to tackle the problem, get their arms around how big it is, and start thinking longer range, and start breaking this down into increments that can be more easily handled. So to the degree it's going to have a financial impact, yes, probably has just as big a financial impact if we do nothing.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? No? Okay. Vice Mayor Bobby?
So it was we didn't actually write this, right? This was a model resolution that we just.
This is a model, yes.
I was curious why they have 5 votes of yes on it. Was that just a typo? Or is that
That's a
foreshadowing?
typo.
That was, yeah, that shouldn't be
mistake.
there.
Or sometimes
Wishful
we'll put things
thinking.
in default to the I,
got
and then
it.
if it needs to be
Got
corrected,
it.
we correct
Okay.
it. Yeah.
It's
Great,
the
thank
machine.
And as I read this, and I just asked the town manager or the attorney to confirm, this is just sending our support with no, as Commissioner Gossett even said, no financial burden or any other burdens to it, right?
There's nothing in here that budgetarily obligates us to participate in. This is basically to show from a policy perspective that the local body of Highland Beach supports the state moving in these directions.
Great, no further questions.
Yes, actually, when I was at the American Flood Coalition, this came up. And this has to do with being part of the League of Cities, which we are, and supporting them. It's what they're really saying in this is we need the government funding for this. We need the government funding for the flooding. And we need, that's part of what the American Flooding Coalition was all about. This was also in there. It's anything to do with water, but we need grants from the state and we need grants from the federal government. So this is just saying, go ahead, guys, lobby, let's get some money from the federal government. So I'm all for it. At this time, are there any public comments? Public comments are now open. Does anyone have any questions on this or comments? Okay. All right, now there being no further comments, the public comments are now closed. And at this time, the commission, would anyone like to make a motion to adopt the resolution number 19-033R?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Go ahead. Town clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Yes.
Commissioner David,
Yes.
Commissioner Gossett Seidman,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Bobby,
Yes.
and Mayor Zellniker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'm sure the League of Cities will be happy that we participated. Okay, we're up to number 10, which is the consent agenda. Nomination to reappoint Richard Balin as a member to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals to serve a 3-year term ending November 30th, 2022. At this time,
And B, so this is
B.
first practice on consent. You do both.
we're going to do both together. Okay, but each person will come up. Nomination to appoint Susan Amerling Stern as a member to the Natural Resources Preservation Board to serve an unexpired term ending April 30th, 2021. Okay, at this time, they'll come up and speak to us.
Or you can move and open for discussion and let public weigh in. Yep.
First, which would you like to do? I think usually what we do is we introduce the people.
This is a consent, so there's no interviews, discussions. You had
There's
already.
no interviews,
you'd
it's all
already-
set.
Mr. Balins, you had already, as
Yes.
a couple months ago, and Mrs. Stern, also you talked with at the last meeting. So
Meeting, okay.
under consent, it's just to move
Okay.
it along, and if the public or if a commissioner wants to pull an item, you can.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's
Okay.
move to approve and.
Okay. All right, so a commission discussion. Commissioner David?
Since it's a consent agenda, we've already agreed to do this.
So we're just making
Yes,
it
let's
official,
do it.
that's all. Okay. Commissioner Donaldson?
Yeah, I'm fine with moving ahead
Yeah.
with this.
Commissioner Gossett Seidman?
Yes, move ahead, thank you.
And Vice Mayor?
Move it forward.
Okay, and I also say, move it forward. And I'm sorry, the Board of Adjustment and Appeals doesn't have too many meetings. I don't think you've had one. And that's credit because of the fact, we have to give credit to our building department, which we never had. And we now have a building department that will not pass unless the codes are correct. So perhaps we should look into in the future of even having that group do something else or work in coordination with the planning board or something. I'm sorry, you didn't have much work. But we appreciate your participation. Because everyone's building to our codes now. Okay. We have a building department. Okay, and we look forward to having you at our next meeting. I think there is a meeting for the environment. So you'll be at that meeting, correct? I'm talking to you. You're now on the environmental committee, the Natural Resources Preservation Board. Yeah. Okay, good. Welcome. Welcome. Are there any public comments on any of these appointments at this time? Yes?
Why are you guys even looking at these people? They are residents of Highland Beach. That's been shown by the town manager, permanent residents. They have passed background. That's been assured. They're volunteering for boards. You have put weeks of delays in this process for no good reason. If the boards are willing to have them and they meet the criteria, let them be on the boards. Thank you.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
I need a second.
I second.
All in favor, say yes.
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 Anyone opposed, say no. Okay, because it has to be officially done in government, that's why. Unfinished business, there is none. New business, approval of meeting minutes, September 24th, 2019, regular minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Madam Mayor?
Yes, certainly.
Well, for some reason, I got in my edit mode and I found some corrections that need to be made.
Okay.
Not so much for style, but for content and meaning. So if I could just get through on page 7 of 16. Commissioner David's comments, the first line. I think what was meant to have been said was stated that the trolley cars have nothing to do, or that they have, if they have anything to do. But as it's written, doesn't make sense. Under my comments, second line, she stated she was wondering if any other bids or paperwork. There's no verb there, and I think you might want to include if there were any other bids or paperwork. And comments on the next line should be singular. Page 8 of 16, it says on the last line of my comments, we will have a menorah and a Christmas, I think you meant to say tree, Christmas tree. And lastly, on page 9 of 16, Commissioner David's comments, first line, that the company spread out where, I think he meant to say W-H-E-R-E, where the lights go. So if we could just make those changes, it would be better read. Thank you.
Corrections will be made.
Okay, duly noted. Okay, with the corrections, okay, we will continue. Are there any other corrections, commissioners? Nope. Okay, at this time, public comments are now open. If anyone would like to speak, 3 minutes it is. Tim?
Tim Burnich again, 4505 South Ocean Boulevard. Just commenting on ordinance 19-0100. Most people don't understand that the Code Enforcement Board doesn't just go out and find issues and deal with them themselves. They have to be presented to the Code Enforcement Board. And I think that was made a little clearer with this new ordinance. And we don't handle anything until it's brought before us. Now, as an individual, you can go out and ask the code compliance officer to look into something, but it may come back to bite you that you may have to recuse yourself if there is a hearing on the subject before the Code Enforcement Board. So I like people to understand how the code enforcement works. In the past, I've gotten telephone calls at some strange hour, somebody wanting me to take care of a problem, and I have to go through the whole history of how they have to do this, and they're not always happy when I tell them that. But thank you.
Well, I thank you. Our meetings are a little confusing, but this was a comment about the minutes, but it's okay. It's okay. Because we're going to have another time when you're going to be allowed open comments. It's okay. I said public comments, but it was about the, it's okay, it's okay. Is there a motion to approve the September 24th, 2019 with the corrections?
So moved.
Second?
I second.
And all in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Say no. Okay. Now we have the general public comments and requests on agenda items only. And we heard Tim's comment, and we thank you for that. It's 5 minutes to speak on any agenda items only. Okay, please state your name and your address. Anyone have any comments? Dr. Greenberg. Wald, Dr. Greenwald. You always talk to us. He's our resident with a lot of wisdom. Yeah, okay. Okay, good, because I know he's very good. He comes to all our meetings, and he always has something nice to say.
This is your fault, though.
Okay.
Rick Greenwald, Tranquility Drive. This really is more of a governance suggestion. It's only peripherally relevant to prior agenda items, and therefore I was actually going to remain silent. I've suggested this before. It's not an urgent kind of thing, but I think it would be helpful. And that is to have, now that the meetings are getting more efficient and timely and so on, to actually add another agenda item that would be arranged via the town manager in terms of scheduling. And that would be to have department head reports, approximately, maybe one a month, so not at every meeting, but maybe every other meeting. And I think that these would be helpful for a variety of reasons. One, I think it would provide some factual information for the commission. In terms of questions like you asked today, like what's going on in terms of how many code violations there are, or in terms of, well, how many ambulance runs is the fire department making? Or there's been lots of discussions about water, and what is the water department doing about all this? So I think it's good for informational purposes, both for you and for the residents. And I also think in some of my previous lives that doing this is very good for team building and building trust, because everybody actually gets to know some of the key people besides Marshall who are working for us in the town, whether that be the chief or Pat in the water department or building department or whatever it is. So I would suggest some sort of a rotation arranged by the town manager where periodically at these public meetings, everyone would hear from the police chief, code compliance officer, who many people probably wouldn't recognize at this point, water department, somebody from the fire department, anybody else, town clerk's office possibly.
Library.
And the library, exactly. I'd love to hear from the library. Some
Yeah,
of
we
my
love our
favorite
library.
people.
We love it.
But again, I think it would be helpful. What they would do is just speak for 10 to 15 minutes and basically give a State of the Union for their department, if you will. And I think it might be a nice touch for these meetings. Thank you.
Well, that's an excellent suggestion, and you always have good words for us. Thank you. Okay, and at this time, are there any other comments from anybody? No? Okay, we have Town Commission reports, and we'll start with Commissioner David.
No report at this time.
Commissioner Donaldson?
A couple of items. I raised a couple of discussion topics at the last meeting. I just wanted my fellow commissioners to know that I'm still working on those. I want to give them a little more thought based on your input, but hopefully I will be bringing those back to you. I think during the holidays, we're all a little bit focused on some other things, so maybe we'll defer that until after the first of the year. But again, I appreciate your input, and I will be working on those. The second item is I want to read into or have placed into the record a personal correspondence I received from the Florida Elections Commission. This is regarding case number FEC 19-138. The respondent is Mr. John Ross. This is for a consent order that deals with the respondent not timely registering the Committee to Save Highland Beach as a political committee. It carried a fine of $150, which has been paid. $500. $500, which has been paid. I think this serves as a reminder to anyone who wants to engage in political actions in the town. There are points at which you need to become a political committee. It was overlooked in this case. That's unfortunate. But going forward, I hope we won't have a repeat of that. That's all I have.
Well, thank you very much. And then we have Commissioner Peggy Gossett-Seidman.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to give an update since it was not added as an agenda item, which is fine. Last week, as Mr. Labadie and the chief know, there was a wire hung. I don't know I was out of town, so I don't know the exact height, but it was hung so low that garbage pickup could not be made to Intercoastal Drive and parts of Bell Lido Drive. It was strung from the southeast corner to the northwest corner of Bell Lido Drive, the main thoroughfare for Bell Lido. And the reason I'm bringing it up is this is the 5th time that this has happened to this wire since I've lived there, going on 24 years. And there is an ordinance. I have a roommate who works for FP&L at the executive level, a former roommate. And when there is a repeated problem with a wire, a municipality may request that wire be moved or undergrounded at no cost to the municipality. And so what I'll do is provide the information to Mr. Labadie, but I thought it should be noted to the town, the community, that due to this situation, a person could not be delivered home via ambulance who had been in the hospital. The person had to be shuttled down the road on a gurney with 2 firemen. And that's just preposterous that I believe that this happens in our town. This wire is I have a few pictures I'll pass around to the commission. This wire twice has gone down on A1A and set on fire. The underbrush was set on fire. That was April 7th of 2018. It has gone down a number of times, once for 6 weeks, and we had no cable, internet, or alarm, no alarm services for those who have AT&T or Comcast. And so, yes, ma'am, if you'd like to pass these out. When we have this repeatedly, something should be done. There should not be wires ideally strung across A1A or side streets, and I will give the information to Mr. Labadie so that he can maybe pursue this with the utilities down the road. I just think it's unacceptable on Thanksgiving weekend that the chief and marshal and the community had to deal with this when it has been so many times been a problem. Thank you very much. I'll pass these around to the commission and give the full report to Mr. Labadie. One more thing, the wires, I measured the wires with my husband yesterday. He has a gauge which shoots an electronic beam to the bottom of the wire and then to the ground and measures it. The wires are technically legal. They are 15 feet, 16 and a half feet, and 16 feet at their lowest point. But the highest part of an unlocked load-bearing flatbed with a crane on it can be 18 feet. And this is precisely what snapped the wire last year. An unsecured boom can go up to 44 feet, and the load of the truck can legally go up to 22 feet, which in all cases would snap a wire. So if we're having construction in our town and we are working with commercial vehicles, then we should really abide by the commercial code, which states that wires must be strung at 18 feet. I looked it up last night. It's pretty easy to find. So I think we have good reason to ask the utilities to take care of this some other way so we don't have to be put out on a holiday weekend. Was not fair to our staff. Thank you very much.
Vice Mayor?
No report.
No report, okay. The comment that I wanted to make about with the wires is Governor DeSantis did pass a bill. You know that. I'm not sure if it's in reference to coastal communities, but everybody's going to have in January a higher FP&L bill because Governor DeSantis wants all wires underground. And of course, if we put all the wires underground, you won't have these problems. There was also an article that Commissioner Donaldson had sent to all the commissioners about the wires with the fires in California, how dangerous it is to have the wires above ground. So eventually it's going to happen. We will be having the wires underground. I might be 6 feet under, but it's going to happen. One day it will happen, and it's the right thing to do for our community. But other than that, I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Everybody enjoyed their dinner and their family. And I'm looking forward to the 5th for our 70th anniversary of Highland Beach. And I'm certainly looking forward to celebrating Christmas and Hanukkah and whatever else we want to celebrate life and the beautiful nature that we live in Highland Beach. And I look forward to seeing many, many residents there. Thank you all. And at this point, we're going to go to Town Attorney report.
I hope everyone had a nice Thanksgiving. This is a report that's really a verbal report, but I figured I'd put it in writing for you because you've talked about it a couple of times. It's always the worst thing to pass something out and read it at the same time because people are reading and not listening. But in the attachments are some Attorney General reports, and I've given a copy to Nelda. Basically, the question is commissioners and advisory board members attending meetings via electronic means, such as telephones. And I'll summarize this, and I gave you a little bit of the history. 1992, the Attorney General says it's okay as long as there is a quorum physically present and whoever's on the phone is unable because of a medical condition or emergency circumstances. Well, then in 1994, the Attorney General started backing up from that strict requirement and saying someone who did not have health problems could attend by phone, again, as long as there are some, quote, extraordinary circumstances. That's the phrase they often use. And then in 2003, the Attorney General, again, always that same requirement. Quorum must be physically present, and the other person must be able to hear and be heard. So if you're on a speakerphone or video phone or any other electronic device. But in 2003, they loosened it up a little more because you still have to, that's the top of the second page, as long as the quorum is physically present, and whether the absence of a member due to a scheduling conflict, which is you went from having a medical emergency to no medical emergency, just a scheduling conflict, constitutes such an extraordinary circumstance, is up to the board. So you can adopt a policy deciding how loose or strictly you want to interpret the terms extraordinary circumstance if they've gone as loose as saying a scheduling conflict. So I want you to take a chance to, I attached those 3 Attorney General opinions so you can kind of see the evolution of the opinions. What it really doesn't address is that Code Enforcement Board, for example, or any other quasi-judicial where you're sometimes sitting in that capacity where you're making a determination. You may want to be, if you do go down this path of allowing folks to attend electronically, maybe be a little stricter in that circumstance, because if you're someone presenting a case and you have evidence, you have photographs, you have documents, and Marshall and I had spoken about this too, if you're going to do this and you want to have a more robust conversation and you want the person to truly have due process, then you probably want to have a setup where it's more than just a speakerphone, whether it's some kind of, Skyping or whatever the electronic media would be, where if you have a piece of paper and you say, okay, here's my document, the person on the other side can have it emailed to them, open up their computer and see it and engage. Or you can even be strict enough to say, quasi-judicial, you can't participate. So you have that full range of not allowing it at all to allowing it for regular meetings on a basis of extraordinary, and you get to define within some reason what's extraordinary, and then quasi-judicial is the next level. So just wanted to give you something to think about over the next holidays and chew on, and if you ever want us to come up, along with Marshall with a policy to implement this, then we could do so.
Thank you.
Town manager report. Okay. First, I would like to introduce Ingrid Allen, our new town planner. She's on day 5. She's still here. I don't know that she'll have a 10-minute presentation today, but we'll get to that. But I want everyone to meet her. Again, this is our full-time planner. She'll be assuming a lot of the responsibilities that Mary was doing, and then some, helping out in other elements of the building services too. So she joins our family here. She comes from Boca, so it was a coup for us. Quite talented. I'm glad that she's part of our team and will help us move forward. So I wanted everyone to put a name and a face. And Ingrid, do you want to say anything or? Okay.
Welcome. Thank you. So, good afternoon, Mayor, members of the Commission. As Marshall indicated, I do come from the city of Boca Raton. I was a senior planner there for 6 years. Prior to that, I was with the town of Davie for 8 years as a senior planner. So actually, this January will be 15 years that I've worked as a municipal planner. So I'm very excited about being here at the town. As Marshall said, it's day 5. So there's a lot to learn. I've been reviewing your code, working with the staff here. Everyone's been very nice, trying to figure out how you all do things here. So it's a little bit of a learning curve, like any position you get into. But I'm very excited to be here. And if you have any questions about anything, by all means, feel free to give me a call.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome aboard. Does anyone want to make any comments?
No, just welcome and thank you for coming aboard.
Great, thank you.
Barry?
Yes, thank you. Welcome aboard. We look forward to working with you.
Peg?
Thanks and welcome.
Welcome.
Okay.
So last thing, yes, crosswalks. We're moving on it. We may need a 17th meeting. I think I could probably wait till January 7th. And another approval we have to have through FDOT. So we're working through that. Chief brought something very interesting to our attention that you may see on A1A as you move through Delray. Initially, FDOT said or presented some concern or reluctance to allow us to do multicolored crossings to yet further the visibility. They've now come off and said, oh yeah, you can do that. So we're trying to add a few tweaks. We'll try to check on the height and if we could add some additional lighting with them, because they seem to, each time I ask, to be more agreeable. So we're still moving through it, working through the RFPs along with RFPs on 5 other projects and 5 different subject matters. So we're really hitting the ground, making those projects happen. We'll be working through those December and really hopefully getting a new year where we kick it off again. Light up the holidays. You'll see there's some things that are missing. Again, there's 2 things that are missing that are purposed to be missing, which is the nativity scene and the large dreidel. Those were removed from the contract. But what you do see missing that should be coming tonight, if they want to remain our contractor, is our menorah that's supposed to be out there that we always have, and then some additional decorations that have not been installed. But to get those in, I'm comfortable they'll get them in before our event, but a little bit of delay. So you'll see some of the install, but they're not lit up because they haven't finished installing. That should be happening this evening, but definitely by our event on Thursday, which will be great. I hope everybody can attend. We'll have a trolley. The weather looks good and cool. We can put jackets on and, maybe a hat if you're really cold. But it should be a great event. I hope everybody's there. I like to see everybody present so we can all continue to make our friendships and move forward as a community. Again, it's going to be a great event. Lynelda and her team did a wonderful job putting all the details together and a few new interesting elements that we'll be able to experience. So I look forward to seeing everybody on Thursday, 6:30. If you want to come earlier, we'll be starting earlier. I know the trolleys fire up at about 5:30. So, put out your hitchhiking thumb and you'll see the trolley come up and down the road, stop at those individual sites. Also, Chief and his team will be present and making sure everybody has a safe travels to and on and off of the trolleys. And the trolleys are handicap accessible, so those that, if you have a guest, a friend, a spouse needing some help up and down, they do have lifts on it. So everybody can be accommodated. Everybody's welcome, and I look forward to seeing everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, this is an early meeting for us. Okay, being no further business, we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay, and we have adjourned at 2:48 in the afternoon. My husband will be shocked that I'm home. Okay.
Hello, sir. Yeah, I'm gonna get that out to you. We used to get it. Also, it's relatively a decent report. I don't know what Chief gets out of his system. It's slightly different from out there. I'll get it to you.